Welcome, everybody. I'd like to call to order Committee of the Board, the Rules of Order Revision Committee at 1:01 p.m. Roll call, Supervisor Carey.
Present.
Clerk Flintoff, present. Trustee Brandt.
Here.
Office Coordinator Aiken.
Here.
And Attorney Mariah Fink.
Here.
All right, we have quorum. There's a proposed agenda before you. Are there any requested changes, or is there a motion to adopt the agenda as presented?
I'll move to adopt the agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved by Brandt, support by Aiken. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. The agenda is adopted. Okay, public comment. This is the time for members of the public to speak for up to 5 minutes on any matter under the purview of this committee. Welcome, Rob.
How are you? So I've got a bunch of questions. Thank you for the redlined version of the rule of order. One thing that's been happening, since Scio Township resident, one thing that's been happening is for the last couple of years is that the agenda packet will get posted and it'll be 200 pages. And then a couple of days later, it'll be 300 pages. And a couple of days later, it'll be 400 pages. Is that control of which agenda we're gonna get? Is that gonna be controlled in this rules of order? Yes.
That's the goal. We talked about that last time, but we didn't refine that.
And that's the Tuesday deadline and the Wednesday publishing, right?
Well, there's more nuance. We talked about talking about the agenda item versus the attachments and digging into that more.
Okay. I see that Pledge of Allegiance has been removed. Or not included. I think Pam made the recommendation years ago. And I think there's validity to it because it reminds everybody why we're here, and that in the past board that was significantly needed to be reminded. I think there is still value in that.
Yeah, and I will say, I think the discussion last time was that we were going to discuss Pledge of Allegiance and or some other similar type thing.
Right. And the questions that I have, I'm sure some of them are going to be attended to today. I've personally been asking for staff to be put first right after consent for years. I would like to continue to ask that, whether it's a new business or an old business or a report or an introduction or an information thing. Can we please put something in the rules of order to put staff at the beginning of it so they can go home at a reasonable time? And that shows the staff that you're interested in taking care of their time while they're reporting to the board. And then you added making a response an option after the public comment. I sincerely appreciate that because that is more about interaction between the board and the public. That is a very good thing. And section 4.3, finally, well done. The anti-Hathaway clause of the rules of order, that adding stuff to the agenda requires a majority vote. It's not the sole responsibility of the supervisor, as Hathaway used to control the meetings. And he always said, it's not ready, it's not ready. And we no longer have that. That was perfect. On special meetings, there's no second public comment. You talked about that last time, but I don't remember if you resolved it. 4.4.
Yeah, we'll relook at that. Yeah, we talked about that.
Okay. And 5.3 about interrupting. You guys interrupt each other all the time. And I think there's two different things that happen in the board meeting. There's the conversations you're having during discussion, and then there's the more formal thing where everyone gets a chance to talk and no one's interrupted. I don't know how you account for that in 5.3, but it can't be so rigid that you're only you're only allowed to speak once recognized. That really diminishes the effectiveness of the discussion. The conversation is really where things happen. 7.3. Board response. I just talked about that. That's good for interaction. And same thing goes for public hearings on 8.0. And you also made 10.3, which is amending a motion is no longer the sole responsibility of the person making the motion, that there's now a majority vote. Again, that's another Hathaway where he wouldn't accept a friendly amendment, and now it goes to a majority vote. Very good. Fine. Need to clarify the top sentence. A decision to table shall carry with all questions to which it is attached, except in the case of appealing a decision by the chair. What does appealing a decision by the chair mean? Maybe this is a Mariah question.
I had to look it up.
Okay.
We'll talk about that, make that word plain.
That sentence is confusing.
Yeah, agree.
It was more confusing before the edit.
Yeah, indeed. And then the second bullet point, the motion to reconsider, and that is, are you sure you only want people who were in the prevailing vote of the initial resolution or motion to have the ability to make a motion to reconsider? That's a question. Do you really want it just to be the prevailing people to have that option? And then on the appeal, the last section, the second to last bullet point, the last section, any such appeal may be laid on the table, but it shall not carry with it the matter before the township board at the time such an appeal is taken. What does that mean? That's another clarification. 11, attendance. We had significant attendance issues with two board members in the last 4 years. One was Corteau, one was Bruzeau. Corteau, in my opinion, had an excusable absence because she was taking care of family who were ill. Bruzeau just didn't show up. And I think the board has to have some sort of attendance requirement. And is there censure? Is there, you can't remove them because they're elected, but there's got to be some sort of, maybe they don't get paid. If you miss 3 in a row, you start getting docked pay or something. But I would recommend something to assure constant attendance. Yeah. Because that has been an issue.
We talked about that at the last meeting and we're gonna revisit that.
Okay. And then abstaining. And this is another question for Mariah. At the 12.2 is about obligation to vote. And you can make a motion to abstain and ask permission of the board to abstain. And is recusal, is that where you don't ask permission, where the person just recuses themselves from the vote? Or is the abstention the only option?
Recusal is not possible.
Okay, so there is only abstain. Why is recusal not possible?
Recusal without permission of the board. I mean, abstention, it requires permission of the board.
Okay.
The onus is on all of us to vote on every question before us unless permitted by the board not to.
Okay. One thing that I saw that you have greatly increased the text about conflict of interest. I would suggest on 12.4, item 7, is a matter in which, due to particular circumstances, the board member believes there may be the appearance of improper bias that could taint the outcome or process if the board member participates. I think that should be your number 1 conflict of interest bullet point there, because the others are more specific. But in my opinion, the appearance is the most important thing to emphasize, because appearance of conflict of interest, whether there's an actual one or not, is important because that impacts how the public views the people who are voting. 12.3, whether it is a real or perceived, I think perceived, again, needs a stronger emphasis because, again, whether it's actual or the appearance or perceived, I think that needs to be stronger language.
We're gonna replace 12.3 with 12.4.
Not necessarily. So remember that you guys just asked me to bring you some
Right.
conflict of interest language. So
Okay.
I just,
Dropped it in.
Right.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
we're
I mean, I
work-
made some edits to it, but mostly,
Yeah,
yes.
we'll work
just-
through
It's
it.
a duplicate.
This is all the outcome of our last conversation.
And that's all my questions, except for the last one, is that are there statutes or are there other guidelines for rules of order that would drive some of these changes that we're talking about? Yes,
Yes.
okay.
I mean, everything we're doing is supported by statute, to the best of our knowledge, part of why we have Mariah here.
Right.
I don't know, like other guidelines, what you're referring to.
I'm assuming there have to be rules of order in other townships that,
Yeah.
that might, and there might be some townships out there that I haven't looked at this, but there might be other townships out there that have had good success with their rules of order that have resulted in smooth meetings and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And that might help to be a guide for this rules of order.
Yeah, I've got my, binder of the kind of models, from other jurisdictions that, we've been pulling from. I know other people, Jillian brought some that she liked. But I haven't found anything that's, gold,
Perfect.
or
Yeah.
perfect. It's all pieces.
Well, the rules are only as good as the board members that will follow them.
And that is what is so good about this committee and this change is that there was a real, for lack of a better term, a real cruelty to the last rules of order. And you wrote the rules of order with Hathaway and you could only go so far. And now we're getting it to a more equal and a better and smoother rules. So,
I would agree, and I think, the last rules were first. This is a much more collaborative
yeah.
process than we had the first time around, so they'll be better.
And if it hadn't been for you pushing for the rules of order and at least getting something written down, it would have been much worse.
Just to get the party started.
Yeah, as bad as it was with Hathaway, it would have been worse if you hadn't done the first rules of order. So, well done.
Thank you for your points, Rob. Any other public present who would like to speak?
Thanks for the extra time. I realize it was
Thank you,
overrun.
Dan.
Rob did a perfect job.
Okay, anybody online who would like to speak, please raise your Zoom hand. Okay, seeing none, I'd like to close public comment. Move on to approval of the minutes. Thank you, Christy, for drafting the minutes. Are there any proposed changes or is there a motion to adopt the minutes as presented?
I'll make a motion to adopt the minutes as presented.
A motion by Brandt, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Aiken. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. The minutes are adopted as presented. Unfinished business, continuing the review. I just want to remind ourselves, this is the fourth meeting we've had. A record of the rules that we've reviewed at each one. So we've now successfully gone through all the rules once. So congratulations. Now for this meeting, what I'd like to suggest is that we kind of set a goal. I want to see what folks think about this, is that this would be our final meeting to get these to a point where we can bring them to the board to start the deliberation there at the board. My feeling is that we'll be at the point of diminishing returns. We could work on these for months and tinker with them, but until we know what a majority of the board thinks, I don't know that it's really worth our while to do too much more work. I think we've been pretty efficient. How do folks feel about that?
I think that's good.
Jillian, Kathleen?
Yeah, it's fine. What are we doing today?
To try to button these up to a point where we're comfortable with a revised draft to bring to the board. Okay, great.
I think that when they do go, we should provide a red line and a clean, because the red line is getting so messy.
Sure. Yeah, for sure. I agree. Okay, then with that, I'd just like to have us just, focus in on a couple of areas. I'd like to just go through from the top, if there's anybody who has something burning they want to jump in on, say so. If it's not burning, let's not tinker with it and move forward. Section 1. I have nothing. Anyone else?
No.
Section 2. Want to look, this is where you made substantive changes. I might suggest, regarding 2.3 work session, that we might schedule a work session as part of our regular schedule.
That's a good idea.
And I think 2.3 should maybe allow for that.
Doesn't it say that in addition to its work sessions published with a regular meeting schedule?
Oh, okay, you know what? Okay, language, can we,
Is that confusing?
no, it's a little bit. So let's decide, when we say, and this comes up, regular schedule doesn't mean regular meetings. We say regular schedule and regular meeting schedule. So maybe 2.1, we should just name schedule of regular meeting dates. Because I think,
That's what it says though,
okay,
and possible work session meetings.
Oh, so regular meeting schedule instead of just regular schedule?
or maybe in 2.3, let's just change it to with the regular schedule, just so it's consistent.
Okay.
I think when I saw regular meeting again,
Right, so
Yeah.
just to be clear, what we're trying to do here is say, when we do our regular schedule for the monthly meetings, we may also schedule special meetings at the same time. In addition to that, we can
No.
schedule other special meetings.
No.
Work session.
no, work sessions.
Oh.
We
But
got
work
work
sessions
sessions.
are special meetings unless
No,
they're
it's
within.
Just,
I think Jillian, work sessions could be either that if we schedule them at the top of the year in the regular schedule, then we may have regular meetings and work sessions.
But they're still labeled special meetings.
semantics. It's
Well,
just-
but we then we
look,
need
they're
to
not-
clarify.
Look in statute, there's nothing about work sessions. It's either regular meetings or special meetings.
I agree with you, Jillian. I think we, though, have the opportunity to, at the top of the year, state that we're gonna have some work sessions, and those would be regular meetings.
Why don't we just clarify by saying special meetings and then does not include work sessions or something like that?
I agree,
Because I'm also getting confused by the two different things.
I agree.
So, okay.
Yeah, we're all getting a little confused, so,
Yeah.
because we only have regular meetings or special meetings. I just want to make sure, and maybe we define what a regular meeting is. I think a regular meeting is a meeting, tell me if I'm wrong, a regular meeting is a meeting that the board adopts a schedule of at the top of the year that I publish in the paper of record.
Yeah.
So no matter how,
Mhm.
you know, if it's 3 days in a row or whatever it looks like, as long as it's published, that's a regular meeting.
I still think we should call it, I think we should change 2.1 to regular meeting schedule. I think
Okay.
that will just clarify.
And then should we say,
And then I've got special meetings and then in parentheses does not include work sessions. And then we've got work session down below. And then I'm gonna put meeting back into the regular meeting schedule.
and do we want to define what like the intention of a work session is to discuss an issue in depth, but take no action or
Yeah, without decisions, right?
without decision? Like just kind of a working definition of what we mean by work session.
This is slightly, off topic for this agenda, but it addresses a public comment. In past, I have suggested that we have a monthly work session with department heads for reports. It could be 6
Good idea.
o'clock before a regular meeting. But currently, we don't get reports from department heads except for the fire chief. What we get is agenda items to purchase or do
No,
something.
we have a schedule for department heads to provide reports. In fact, our code enforcement officer and somebody else is scheduled for this next meeting. And then the week, that on April 8th, I know for sure that Chris Chang, project managers report.
So that's not an interactive thing, right?
Sure, could be. That's if you want them in person.
So it sounds like what I'm hearing is like a different proposal for how we organize it. Right
Yeah.
now, we have them during the regular meetings, according to a schedule set by Christie. I'm hearing that Kathleen is proposing that we bundle them kind of together,
I think bundling and doing a once a month.
especially
And doing it
earlier,
Be fine.
earlier.
which is better for
Yes,
staff.
absolutely. I think that's fine, but we do currently do them throughout the year off of a schedule, but when Joyce was here, she said, just do a written and then if the board wants to hear from you, you know. So, but I think Kathleen's idea would be better going forward.
And some board members have complained about why are the department heads reading their report to us when we can read it ourselves? It would just,
I haven't ever complained about that.
well, there are board members that have complained about it.
Try it.
So maybe we could add to 2.1. That, you know, the regular meeting dates. You know, the work sessions shall include, you know, quarterly work
I
sessions.
think
whatever
Kathleen
it
said
is.
once a month though.
Whatever is appropriate timing.
Yeah, whatever is appropriate timing, work sessions dedicated to hearing, department head reports.
That's 2.3, not 2.1, right?
I think it would be in 2.1, Rob,
Oh,
only because I'm
It's gonna
suggesting
be-
that we set it at the top of the year.
A regular schedule.
oh, right, of course. I'm sorry. Sorry for interrupting.
No, no worries. I'm not quite sure how we'd say that, but that idea would be top of the year, however frequently as needed, earlier in the evening, work sessions to hear from
Mhm.
department head reports.
Yes, I do think that we could put it in 2.3 because I think we could say,
Oh, that those
But-
must be scheduled at the top of the year. Okay,
I
that's
like, I
fine.
like that better,
Okay,
especially if we're changing the first 2.1 to be regular meeting schedule. We wouldn't want to muck it up with work session. So I
Okay.
did change the work session language to say a work session is intended to allow more in-depth discussion of a topic, but does not include any action by the board.
right.
Should it say generally include any action by the board? Do you ever make decisions at work sessions?
We don't have any consistency at all to any practice around it. So I think we should just state that it
Not
is
going to.
intended to be
The
discussion.
prior
only.
boards, when I first started here, they would meet on a Saturday
Yeah, talk.
conference room and that's how they did it. It was
Yeah,
still
Great,
open,
Travers.
but. And Nancy made muffins and brought.
Yeah. I will not be doing that.
So there's, yeah, so during a closed session, we cannot make a decision. I think that's where we're getting confused, but possibly a work session and a special meeting is a meeting of a certain topic that we can vote.
Sure.
So this is, we're kind of mixing things together, like work sessions, can we vote or not?
I think we can do whatever we commit to doing.
And we don't have anything in here about closed session.
That's in the statute.
Right, but there's also things that we reference here regarding statute as well.
I think there's something in here somewhere about closed
Yeah.
session. All right.
Okay, but do we agree that we're kind of going for a work session? Work sessions are intended to be for discussion only. Certainly, there's nothing that says we have to, but these rules would commit
Yeah.
us to. Yeah,
Like a planning item, we would discuss it, ask our questions, and then it would, yeah, at the next regular meeting
At a-
or scheduled.
I
And
think
then
that
we would
makes
vote.
sense.
I think it makes sense too, especially for the public, because, you know, if the public wants to come to a meeting and hear their topic on a regular meeting, it's a lot easier for them to keep track of than if you're making decisions on those things at work session.
Right.
So I like that idea. Okay, so at the time the regular meeting schedule is set,
Yes,
the board will also, set the time.
shall include as part of it the times of regularly scheduled work sessions for the purpose of hearing reports from departments.
It could be broader than that, right?
Okay. Okay. We trust you, Mariah.
So
I don't want to call it a regular schedule of work session.
but shall, kind of,
Quarterly work session, I don't know.
yeah, a series of work sessions for the year for the purpose of, yeah, hearing and discussing department head reports.
So should we
So it
say
won't be
a
just for
series,
department head reports, is it?
a series of work sessions, no fewer than quarterly, or no fewer than 4 for the year?
We don't want to meet just for reports.
No,
Don't put any parameters.
no,
I mean,
because we just say as many as,
You could start.
we'll figure it out. I mean, because the reality is that Fran and Christy and I spend about 4 weeks coming up with a proposed schedule before it ever makes it to the board. So we're gonna take consideration in that. Like, it's not,
That is what you said.
yeah, this is like, I mean, we spend many, many weeks coming up with the proposed schedule before it even comes to the
Oh,
board.
yeah.
So we're gonna consider that stuff.
It's a lot.
It's, I'm not complaining, I'm just saying, don't worry, you have people who think about this stuff before it comes to the board.
I like that.
Okay.
2.5 and 3
Oh, which
I think
we can
are-
segue into.
is good. I would just suggest on line 4 by emailing the entire board at their scio.org email addresses, if we could just state their Scio Township, capital S, capital T email addresses, because we're actually switching to .gov pretty soon.
Okay, so taking that out completely.
No, just changing, because it says specifically scio.org email addresses.
Yep.
I think that's overly.
Taking that out completely.
That out
taking
completely.
Scio.org out.
Yeah, and just stating instead the Scio Township
I'm gonna say official.
official, yes. Any questions about 2.5 and 3?
So this is a place where we could also add something about attendance. We have a little language in here
Okay,
about attendance. But basically all we've said is if you're not gonna come, you have to let the board know and you don't have to state a reason. So I wasn't sure how we wanted those two.
yeah, like
spots
where to
work
put it.
together.
I do think this would be a good place to put the attendance language.
I'm also taking out the second L in cancellation, because that's the
Good.
Canadian version.
So what is it about absence?
In the cancellation of meetings, it says, that if you're gonna miss a meeting, you have to notify the board. And then if you're not required to state a reason for your absence.
Right.
So I was just thinking maybe we want to coordinate that language
Yeah.
with the later language about attendance.
Yeah,
But we didn't land on anything about attendance,
So,
so we talked about it.
I would
before.
propose number 1, let's move rule 11 under 2.5 right now and just hash it out.
Great.
Decide what we think, maybe after public notice, wherever it is, 2 or 3. Honestly, it's kind of odd that 3's hanging out there alone, but that's okay. So we'll move rule 11 somewhere between 2 and 3. So we had a good discussion about this last time, sort of the limits of the law, the practicality of what we might want to do. This is, the minimum, which is an improvement, to state something about quorum to make clear for everybody. If there is no quorum, what the only actions, we could say the Board of Trustees instead of BOT may take are to adjourn the meeting and set another date for the meeting. And then as a sub point, we can add something about attendance. We already have new provisions in here requiring that people formally let the whole board know if they're gonna attend or not. They need not state a reason. We did establish that. we discussed a little bit about excused or unexcused. It's uncomfortable to get into evaluating that. It's not really our place. It's up to the voters, so I personally don't want to get into that. We discussed the idea of censure, withholding pay. I think that gets kind of messy, but it is a practical tool, particularly for trustees who by law can be paid per diem, but that's not how they're paid in Scio right now. So I don't know if that's something that would even be legal, Mariah, on the pay, since they get a salary.
Probably not.
Yeah. that's what I
Trustees
said.
can receive a stipend for each meeting, but the officers cannot.
Correct.
Right, but we don't do
But
it
we
that
don't,
way
we,
here.
we don't currently do it that way.
I'm thinking about, it's maybe too goofy, like requiring some sort of written letter or report or something about, you know, being committed to coming. Just a statement that, I don't know.
Yeah, okay, so this was a good idea. We started on last time, something like after X number of absences, you know, a requirement that they submit a written statement to the board.
Because we had talked about the public hearing, which, you know, you said we're holding our committees to a higher standard than
Yeah.
our board members, and like, how do we? I
Yeah,
mean, the public hearing feels a little like flogging in the town square, but
agreed.
there must be some happy medium, right?
Yeah, to say like, hey, you've missed 3 meetings, 4 meetings, 5 meetings, whatever it is. You know, Jessica, you've missed 5 meetings,
But are they consecutive meetings?
just 5 meetings. We
About
could-
5 meetings in general?
In one
in
one
12
year.
months.
I know, that sounds a little,
But we,
like if they missed 3 meetings in consecutive because of an issue with the family. And then they
But-
never miss another one, but oh, end of the year you
There's-
miss one, then you
There's
hit it.
no consequences.
There's gotta be
the
accountability.
only consequence that we can have is the voters. That's it. We
Well-
cannot hold our trustees to say.
You could base it on how, after receiving so many complaints from
No.
voters, I don't
We
know.
can't-
No,
They
I-
would have to recall, that's their
Yeah,
own.
No.
right, the board can't remove anyone,
No.
but I just feel like there must be some way that you could communicate, like, hey, you signed up for this job. People asked you to do this job
you still
because
wanna
you
do
said
it?
you would, and now you're not doing it, like, right.
I think what would be reasonable, if you miss 5 board meetings, properly posted board meetings, in a 12-month period, for any one of the 7 of us, I think it's reasonable to build in a requirement to state that the person who's missing, you know, submits a letter to the board that states, you know, if they expect to be able to continue to make the meeting, something like that.
What if they don't?
Well, then they violated the rules and nothing. I
Okay,
mean-
it just seems like an unnecessary step, because it's the residents that hold us accountable.
I know,
Yeah,
but I've
and-
also heard complaints over the years from residents, valid complaints.
Well, there's a lot
About-
of
That's
complaints
why
that
I
are
said
not
if
addressed
the board
either.
receives so many
So-
complaints, then
Right.
maybe.
But I also don't want to make it, that's kind of subjective. The resident complaints are kind of subjective, but they're important because, and it's subjective only because like the number of residents paying attention, noticing, you know, goes up and down over
Right,
time.
right.
But they've raised really valid concerns over the years about this board doing nothing. And I
Oh,
want
I
to
see.
address
I
that.
have a new idea. I have a new idea that is somewhere between someone having to write a letter and what Jillian is saying, because Jillian has a really good point. Why don't we just put in here what our expected attendance is?
That's
And so
good.
that
I like that.
And then everyone has a copy of the rules and then, I mean, it's a little, you have to say to each other, hey, you're not meeting the expectation in the board rules. That would be the end of it, but at least it would be written down.
I think that's
Do you,
good.
do you not like that?
No, because we have no say over, I mean, we can't force them, because.
No, but I like it. I think it's good.
Well, yeah, go
It's the
ahead.
same thing with.
I just
We don't
think
have to have any rules. I mean,
Right.
we don't have to have any rules. We don't have to have agendas. We don't
Right,
have to by
but-
statute do
So
anything.
but you're looking at, so that comment is, we don't have to have any rules. True, the only rules we really need are, that we have to abide by is statute. So to have something to hold somebody accountable, you know, before not attending, we really can't, other than publicly shaming them, which that only
But I
creates
think, but I think what's
animosity.
nice about having some expectation is then it's not, you know, the public has asked us to do a better job of holding ourselves accountable for attendance. And so I think at minimum, like stating, you know, our expectation is that, you know, members, you know, do their very best to attend every meeting, understanding, you know, things come up.
And maybe that when somebody is appointed, because if somebody is running for office, they're pretty serious
true,
about
too.
their seat. But an appointee may not be because they're just appointed.
Well, I
Should
don't
be
think
the
we
same.
can treat people differently.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that, I think that what I'm trying to get at is that if someone agrees to have the job, to take the job, and they have a copy of the rules, I mean, it's a little bit of an ethical question, right?
Yeah.
You've agreed that you're going to do this job for the people of Scio Township, and when you don't show up, I mean, it's
matters.
bothersome to the board, but it's really bothersome to the people. So it's one of the principles in this ethics
Yeah.
thing that I was talking to you about the other day, which is the principle of accountability. Public servants shall assure that government is conducted openly, efficiently, equitably, and honorably in a manner that permits citizenry to make informed judgments and hold government officials accountable. That's what we're talking about, right, is accountability. So you know, maybe just a statement along those lines in the rules that say that that's what you're all expecting of each other and of yourselves. Does that make
So
sense?
yeah, that makes sense. It's just that there's no consequence if they
No.
don't. That's
Correct.
Yeah.
It still establishes accountability because people have read it. If the absences become excessive, it can be addressed publicly, whether they do anything or not.
It's up to them. But then I think it's good too, so that it's not, you know, public, you know, shaming. It's just like, hey, this is up, Jess. You've missed 3 meetings, 5 meetings, whatever it is. It should be noted.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm gonna put something in here and then
We can
obviously
take a
people
look at it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Let
and
me know.
again, I just want to remind us, like, this is what we've been doing, is working and reworking and reworking, so. Okay, so let's take a look at Rule 4.
Yeah, I see the word administrator is in page 3 near the bottom,
Okay,
just to tidy that up.
Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, and so I'm sorry, which one was that?
She was pointing out
4.2.
4.2, just a oversight.
Jessica, 4.2 is the one that I was going to, I touched on it at the last meeting, but we never really got in depth on it, but
Yeah.
relating to the consent agenda, can we put something in there that if a board member knows that they, or has questions or concerns about a particular agenda item, that they can notify like the director of operations and the person that submitted the item, so if they, and if they don't want to speak to it, what their concerns are in an email, that's fine. But just so that we're aware that it's gonna get pulled, and if it's something that the department head wants to speak to, then we can plan ahead for that.
Yeah,
I think that's good. I think that is, because the problem we've been having is, it's been like a mushing of the proposed published agenda and then the adopted agenda. It's like we have kind of points. We've got
Exactly.
The
And we
published
won't know
proposed
until
agenda,
that evening,
then
but
we have the agenda adopted by the board at the table, and then you raise a good point, and I put a line
it's
in
just so we're
here.
prepared,
above
that's all.
4.3, we should have kind of like the in-between time. So let's add that in there, but kind of keep it chronological.
Cause I know
because-
Will would always, when he would publish the agenda, he always would say in the email,
Yeah. it's a
if
good
you
idea.
haven't, if anybody has any concerns with any of these items, please reach out to me.
or reach out to the department. head,
person who wrote it.
Or the person who wrote it,
That's
because
my preference.
we're
I
supposed
mean,
to be
if- but, you
prepared
know,
to come to this meeting
Okay.
and hopefully
And
we
if they
read
wanna
through the
have
packet.
their comments aired publicly, that's fine too. It's, It's just so we're ready and prepared for,
Okay.
Yeah, and if we have work sessions with these different things, then our questions should be.
if it's something I might be able to answer to, great,
Yeah.
but it might not be, and
Yeah,
So,
I don't know.
I-
It would just be helpful to know.
I agree.
other,
Can we go back to the top though, at four
Yeah.
though?
Yeah, I just wanted to bring that
Yeah,
up
that's
because you jumped
good.
on 4.2.
That's good.
to number 4,
If we could start at 4.
Yeah.
And this is, the section we worked through last time. I would say, on that last sentence, agenda item cover sheet. That is something that once the board adopts rules, whatever they are, I'll rework a new proposed cover sheet to kind of conform with whatever we say the required information
oh,
is.
in Granicus.
And then, we can set up workflows. So if there are, say, things where, okay, we want to make sure any item prepared by somebody who reports to Christie is approved by Christie. Or if we say, any items of these types, need to be approved by finance, whatever it is.
Yeah,
just so
yeah.
that we have that internal, I don't
That's
think we
great. I
need
think that
to
we've never
dig
done it
into that. We've done it informally, but it winds up being very stressful for Christy and me, because we're always running around kind of like, did somebody see this, that?
Yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
but I don't think we need to put that level of detail in the rules. We
Yeah.
just want the rules to support, enough time and preparation, so everybody feels good about what's published
Great.
in the proposed.
City of Chelsea has a really nice agenda cover sheet that just kind of walks people through what they.
Can you send it to me? Any other changes to number 4?
Yes.
Yes.
The supervisor and or someone designated by the township board, i.e. the office coordinator, shall prepare the proposed agenda of business for all township board meetings.
It had been the supervisor and administrator. And that was something we talked about at the last meeting, the idea of designating one person to do it instead of 2 people to do it, I do think is important. And this language still says and or.
Well, I think removing the supervisor completely from anything other than the statutory duty we should do that.
So what is
I
the
don't
language you're
understand.
proposing? I'm not following.
Removing the supervisor from everything except for chairing the meeting, because chairing the meeting or moderating the meeting is a statutory duty. Everything else is something that is an ask of the supervisor.
So you'd propose that the proposed agenda be prepared not by the supervisor and not in coordination with the supervisor?
Unless the board approves compensation for that extra duty.
Okay, I support that. So the language would be
Someone designated by the board.
yeah, I guess the board can designate someone. And it could be, I don't think we should have the IE. I mean, only because these are rules. I think you could state, the someone, I think, if that's the right word, or if you want to limit it to staff, you want to say, staff or officer, whatever it is. I mean, this is true, Jillian, in townships, like, I just had the Pittsfield clerk calling me, they were doing a survey, who prepares the agenda? Webster, who prepares the agenda? And it's always like this, hot potato. Depending on how they do it. I think we're pretty lucky to have the software Granicus, which makes it
So much easier.
so much easier, because typically there's a lot of administrative work that falls on somebody,
Once people submit their items,
and they're responsible for it.
and they're responsible for them,
Yeah.
that's the work.
So the township board will designate. What's the next word?
A person, I guess. I think shall designate in writing, there needs to be some township board,
I'm using will a lot more than shall because I'm just.
Will is
not a
fine.
fan.
but in
Yeah.
writing.
So you're,
Okay.
we're removing the supervisor.
Yep,
to-
the township board will designate in writing. In writing, a person
I think it's important that it's singular.
to prepare to prepare the
Right.
proposed budget.
The
The
proposed agenda.
sorry.
Any board members, department heads, or consultants acting may send such items to the designee.
It's not a designate, I guess it is.
Timing. So this is where we were talking about moving it up. Let's see where we got, Mariah. By 4 p.m. on the Monday, the week before the next regular meeting. On the determination of the
That's a name.
submissions received. And I think the thing about the submissions is, I do think there needs to be like something in here that the person designated has is empowered to have the discretion to determine if something is complete or ready. And I
Yeah.
think that says that, but there is, it's like the budget amendments. Legally, those are happening by the end of March. We're not gonna call a special meeting to do budget amendments. We know, 5 people have worked on them every single day, that Brian was proofing them up until 5 p.m. last night. The resolution's ready, it's just gonna be added. That person should be able to have the good judgment to say clearly that's staying on.
Because it's a deadline.
Yeah,
So right now it says complete items for the next regular meeting, so you wanna add a line after this. Maybe just at the end, or before board members retain the right to amend the agenda. Maybe after any materials considered by the board shall be posted within a revised meeting packet. The designee is, the designee determines and.
if an item is complete.
Okay.
And time,
Actually, let me see. Timely submissions may appear on the next agenda at the determination of the designee. I mean, it's kind
okay, that's fine,
Don't
as
you-
long as we all understand.
of, yeah,
Um,
I'll just make it clear. We don't wanna have to argue about it.
if we could also take those last 2 sentences out of 4.1.
Yeah, I like that.
Could we please take the last 2 sentences out of 4.1 and move them somewhere else? They don't really belong there. Timing of submission, those 2 actually go toward 4.3.
Distribution, oh,
Nope. The last 2 sentences of.
no, I know, but where's the
Go to-
numbers are all weird.
Go
so-
to after the adoption of the agenda. Because there's the adoption of the agenda. And then after the agenda is adopted, and once we get more discipline and rules around the proposed agenda. And then the adopted agenda, then in peak, instead of going through that cumbersome thing Barb and I do to add the materials handed out at the board table, I'd like to then save the next version of the agenda and packet as considered by the board, which can be done.
Got it. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah,
Okay, so take those 2 lines out, move the first line to,
move them.
move them both?
Yeah, I think you can strike the last line because it's already baked into 4.3. Don't you agree? Board members retain the right to amend the agenda at any board meeting. That's what 4.3 is all about.
Well, okay, so you're talking about 4.3 adoption of the agenda. Do you see how jacked up the numbers are? There's like
No,
several
so let's just call it
4.1s.
adoption of the agenda.
Okay.
And if we could add the line, any materials considered by the board, the clerk shall post within a revised meeting packet after the meeting. That's what that is
Yeah,
intended.
so this is coming at the end.
Yeah, at the end of adoption of the agenda.
Got it.
Okay, distribution. So this then designates the director of operations to distribute, which is it was administrator. Now it
Mhm.
says director of operations. Do we want it to be a different person who's preparing it, who's distributing it? Or should it be one and the same? Do we care? What do you think?
It's not that hard to hit print.
Okay, so this is gonna be the designee again, not the director of operations.
I would recommend it is, I think we put that,
I mean, I'm already in there doing it. It's
okay.
right now. That's what I mean. It's,
I don't think there's a need to have a separate step.
Yeah.
Okay. Just adds
yes, exactly.
to the time.
So it shall be posted by, so published. And I'd like it to, we'll change it so it actually says proposed agenda published by 5 PM on a Wednesday before the regular board meeting. Proposed agenda and packet for special meetings shall be distributed in advance of the meeting as soon as reasonably possible, with the goal being 5 days in advance.
Yep.
Where am I missing a proposed in here somewhere?
She's
You're
gonna
okay.
add it.
Okay.
I would suggest the sections on correspondence and reports be moved under the regular order of business as
Okay.
descriptive of those items. I think that's a little, those have always been a little text heavy. I'm fine with what they say. But I just think we should have that much description for each agenda section.
Where is order of business?
It's called regular meetings dash order of business.
It's one of the many 4.2s.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, for some reason I'm having trouble getting
Oh, I
the
see.
numbers to update.
Yeah.
But I think those are there, Jess, because they're part of what's in the packet. Not talking about what's happening at the meeting.
But there's much more in the packet than these, like there's agenda items.
Yeah, but we already talked about all of that.
Okay.
I mean, you can put it wherever you want, but that's why I think it's here, because what we're talking about is how do we get those?
The
How do we
stuff.
get those things from your email box to the packet?
I do it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you do.
Okay, that's great. So then assembling the written reports, director of operations, I think that's,
Still good?
yeah, I think that's fine. I also just think people can submit their own reports, like, this is not
They know how
rocket
to,
science.
yeah.
That's what everybody does. If Kathy
I
has a
think that's kind
government
of how it
report-
goes anyway, but I'll do outside agencies is what I do.
Right, so I think anybody responsible for a report submits their own. And that's what happens now, like if the treasurer's responsible for his support, he's submitting his. If Jillian's submitting a roads report, she submits hers.
Mhm.
I mean, it's just,
You're talking specifically in Granicus, so it appears in the
yeah, and if it's not,
published agenda.
yeah, like it's just in reports, like everybody kind of does their reports the way they want to, and I don't think we need to be prescriptive. I just think if people have a report, they submit it.
But yeah.
So this is
I think
just,
that
this,
everybody should be a report from every department though.
And this-
Periodically.
Yeah,
this is not
agreed.
about that. This is just
Yeah.
about reports from the board.
No,
Yes.
this is about all.
No,
Yeah, it is, it does.
Yes,
Read it.
actually,
It is just about reports from the board. Because we
Right.
took all that other
Right,
stuff
I saw
out
that.
at the last meeting.
Okay, which,
4.1, page 3.
there's two.
So
Oh, here it
like,
is.
what would this be, Mariah, in your mind?
I think it was like the report from Kathy or John, if John has a written report, maybe.
He
sent
used
it
to,
in
John used to
LPC.
send them to me.
Yeah, he would send in an LPC.
But that was on behalf of a various committee, so why did we strike that? I don't recall.
Because I think because of exactly what you're saying is that all those
Yeah.
other people upload their own reports, but members of the board don't necessarily do that. Members of the board hand their report to Christie and she uploads it. So that's,
okay.
I think what we said was we don't have to have language for people who are doing their own Granicus.
So this, but there are not, it's not quite a sort of a Venn diagram here, Mariah, so I still think you're gonna have a person responsible for reports, just have a person responsible for all types of reports. Because it just varies with whoever's in a seat comfortable with technology.
I mean, this is just what we talked about last time.
Yeah, and I apologize. That doesn't match my memory, which
Okay.
it's not.
So are we unredlining that section on 4.4 reports?
I'm suggesting unredlining part of it, just that if we're gonna have a person responsible for ensuring all written reports, maybe not assembling, but ensuring all written reports from members of the board, various committees, and major contractors, you know, like the police, departments are properly uploaded or properly submitted. So just that one person's responsible for making sure it's done.
Okay, so it's not up to the individuals.
Yeah, I think it's not up to the individuals,
Okay.
but just somebody makes sure it's done. So if they want to email it to Christie, for example, if they want to email it to Christie, or Christie, you know, gets the police report and uploads it,
I do.
or I upload a report, she's just
It-
responsible for making
yeah.
sure it's done.
Yeah,
Okay, so I think we're gonna change that to say the director of operations is responsible for assembling written reports from the members of the board, comma, various committees, we're gonna take out the on behalf of, various committees, boards, commissions,
So do we want to
And-
say, yeah, go ahead.
and what do we call it, department heads?
Sure.
Shall be submitted in writing and delivered to. That part's coming out. Yeah, okay, so the director of operations is responsible for assembling written reports from the members of the board, various committees, boards, commissions, and department heads, period. Presentations to the board should be in written format, if possible, submitted in the same manner and by the same deadlines as above.
I think that's fine, except it introduces a confusion. I think I think we could strike that line altogether about presentations. Or if we keep it, it should be separated from reports, because there's an ongoing conflation of reports with presentations, like discussion only. Like, for example, there might be a presentation connected to an action item that needs to be, you know, prepared in sort of the same way as the agenda items. I think presentations should be considered in the timing for submission up above. Because presentation is just one type, presentation isn't distinctively something different.
I don't think that's what they're meaning in here. This is a presentation of a report to the board.
It could be interpreted that way.
Well,
when-
but it's under report, so that's why.
I know, and I think I'm biased by the people who were being involved in the conversations that resulted in this sentence. And so I know that at the time, they were thinking that PowerPoint presentations needed to be handled very differently.
Okay, how about oral reports to the board should be in written format?
Oral, no,
That's confusing.
Well, but the thing is that, okay, why is this here? And trustee Brandt had brought up about having department heads provide an oral report,
Right.
maybe possibly an hour before a meeting.
Right,
But that's an oral report that would also be written? Or you just want them to give an oral report? Because if it's just an oral report, then the director of operations doesn't need to
Well,
collect.
yeah, I think we should be clear here that this is just all written material.
Why don't we just take out presentations?
Yeah,
to
let's
the board?
strike that.
Why don't we just say, Director of Operations is responsible for assembling written reports from the members of the board, various committees, boards, commissions, and department heads, and if possible, they should be submitted the same
Yeah,
manner
if
and deadline
practical,
as.
and I think if practical, because I wanna
like
respect the fact that some people just convey information better orally. And some information is better delivered orally on occasion.
I like it.
Do we really wanna say the director of operations here? I'm fine with it. I just wanna note that then it would possibly be a different person than the board designated.
All right.
But the designee is responsible. And then you could have
I think
a
either way
definition
is
of what
fine.
designee means, because if we end up having a township manager in the future, that designee would be the township manager or the director of operations or
Yeah, I think we just say
municipal,
person,
whatever.
so that keeps it open.
I'm gonna say the person designated to
In section.
prepare,
blah,
yeah,
blah,
the
blah.
person designated to prepare the proposed agenda of business.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna note we've been at this for like an hour, so I will try to pick this up a little bit. Regular meeting order of business. We have pledge of allegiance and roll call struck. My memory of the last meeting, but tell me if I'm wrong, was that we wanted to keep it open for discussion with the board
Yeah,
about if we wanted to do the pledge of allegiance and or some other similar kind of like, you know, oath,
Mhm.
grounding. We talked about a few different ideas.
song.
I said do a great
Let's
mission
sing.
statement too.
A song,
Sure.
So-
Oh, nobody sings that Johnny Appleseed song.
But I
anymore.
don't-
Do you remember that?
I don't think it was accurate to strike it all together. We're gonna stay focused.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I know, it's hard. So something in there, a placeholder for discussion with the board about what possibility there.
Placeholder for meeting opening, placeholder
Sure.
for what? Okay.
Yeah, e.g. pledge of allegiance, et cetera, whatever. It's just a bigger conversation. Okay, any other questions? We did a lot of good work on this last time. Bullet points, adoption of the agenda, declaration of conflict, correspondence received, special topics. You landed on topics, public comment.
So that language,
Yeah.
so what you would ask for is language that would then go on the agenda,
Yeah.
the face
Yeah.
of the agenda.
Yes.
So that's what this is. It might be more than you want.
I think
Yeah, this is over the top.
it's a little over the top. I like the intention. And I do like all comments should be directed to the board and not to other members of the public. That's important.
Yeah.
Or to the board or
Yeah.
board members,
Mhm.
board members.
So the last two sentences were part of what Will had started to say at the beginning of the meeting. Please keep your comments civil, refrain from personal attack. All comments should be directed to the board and not to other members of the public. And then the other part, I mean, the reason I put in the role of the board is to listen attentively, is to remind people that it's not a conversation, it is public comment. But if you don't like that, we can take that out.
I would suggest we remove it. I really like the intention of it. I just think, and we thank you in advance for sharing your thoughts. Somebody is gonna take that as not sincere. It feels a little.
Yeah, because it's, say it over and over again, it's just
I-
every,
But I do think we welcome you to speak to any matter under, it's not just on the agenda, and I know my language of the purview of the Board of Trustees is not right, but something that like anything that's the responsibility of the Board of Trustees. Certainly, they can talk about something that's not, but I always like to invite people to talk about any matter that we should know about that's not just on the agenda.
Yeah, yeah.
then why does it have to say purview under the purview of the board? of
So
trustees?
that's the language I came up with 3 years ago. If anybody has suggestions that they are better than that, that's what we're looking for.
I mean, I would leave it out completely because I think that the whole idea of public comment is people can come and say whatever they want. I mean, they could tell you about the breakfast that they had.
I absolutely
you
agree.
know, So,
And my concern is actually the opposite, that sometimes people are overly like concerned that they have to speak to something on the agenda.
mm,
When in fact, I want to make sure they know they should let us know about anything we need to know about, even when it's not on the agenda.
okay, because when you say under the purview of the board, that would make it just things that you had some control over.
Mhm.
And what I'm saying is that I think they should be able to speak on anything,
I do too.
even if it's weird.
Well, I think both are true. I believe that all. It's just that I find that we have like overly well-behaved residents who are so conscientious and caring that they sometimes say, like, hey, I don't know if this is the right meeting to bring this up. And that always breaks my heart, because it's like, yeah, of course. Like, I don't want people showing up.
And saying whatever they feel.
But I want them to know that they can speak, because some people I've seen show up to a meeting and leave. And I talk to them later, they're like, well, I wanted to speak to this issue, but it wasn't on the agenda, so I didn't say anything. And I want people to know, no matter whether or not the issue's on the agenda, maybe we just say that, whether or not the issue's on the agenda, this is your time to speak.
What about, please keep your comments civil and refrain from personal attack?
We can't stop them. We can just, that's just a reminder, but we can't stop them. I mean, well, there's, short of threats, there's really nothing we can do,
True.
So,
unless they disrupt the meeting.
Maybe it should say something like that.
I'm still gonna get you a gavel.
Oh, I have one.
Oh, do you?
It's, well, it's a pen, but it's, yeah, actually, yeah.
So I think that could be, like, when, is it you, Jessica, that usually says this is when the people are invited to speak, or is it, I don't.
Jillian.
Yeah, obviously not paying enough attention. I mean, I think when you say, this is the time when the public is invited to speak, at that time you could say about whatever is on your mind.
yeah,
There you go, whatever's on your mind, yeah.
yeah.
And hopefully you had a good day.
Well, no, but I would like that, like, if we could even say, to speak, this is your opportunity to speak about what's ever on your mind. Like, because I know that's kind of overly casual, but it gets the point across so that we have something regularly published, written instruction on the agenda.
If you have any good recipes, feel free to share.
So the
Yeah.
board member response, oh, sorry, go ahead.
You can speak on anything you'd like to address to the board.
There you go.
I don't know, I'm just throwing things
I
out.
like
I think
that.
that's better.
Any matter
I'm a
you'd like
little
to
worried
address.
about whatever is on your mind.
Yeah,
No.
it was a little broad.
I know. I mean, they can, we just don't want to encourage, like, you know, the kind of inside your head voice remarks. Board member response clarification, approval of minutes. Mariah, I don't know about that addition you have about the at least 10 days. So I actually would prefer that the instruction be minutes of a special meeting. Minutes will be approved only at regular meetings. Like, I'm okay, I'm not worried about meeting the deadlines of the next regular meeting when we've just had a special meeting.
Okay, that is what you said you were concerned about, so.
No, my concern was about adopting minutes at special meetings.
What does statute say?
Oh, I
Because-
misunderstood. I thought you were worried
No.
if you had a special meeting on Tuesday and a regular meeting on Wednesday.
No.
You were not gonna have those available.
No, I'm not concerned about that.
Okay.
My concern is the statute says we must adopt the minutes at the next meeting. And the statute, and so that I think the statute's unclear, and I was looking for some guidance, like, can we just say that we will adopt minutes at only regular meetings?
Yes.
Okay, that would be great. Because it's always been stressful for me that the statute says you must do it at the next meeting, and when the next meeting's a special meeting, I'm always feeling like I'm screwing up. And I've been, you know, told I'm screwing up in previous. I mean, and it becomes an impossibility sometimes, because I've also then get complaints when I've brought minutes to special meetings. Well, that's not right. You gotta have minutes at a regular meeting. So let's just have something.
Yeah, that's what I think makes sense. I'll check on that real before we
Yeah.
adopt though.
Because I think when I talked to Jim about it a couple of years ago, we kind of acknowledged the statutes. Tricky. Consent, adopting model motions exactly as they appear. Any other items, unfinished matters that have come before the board which have not had a final determination because they were tabled, postponed, or discussion only. I think that's good. And by matters, should we say, what is the difference between the definition of a matter and an item? Because this is where there gets to be a lot of latitude on what's an unfinished.
Well, why don't we say agenda items?
let's say agenda items instead of matters,
Mm-hmm.
to be precise, because I really think unfinished business should really be about items, not matters.
But then on new business, could it be matters or do you still want it to be items? Because those are not in. It could just be agenda.
Yeah, let's just say items. No, it's okay. Okay, and then after the proposed agenda, then Christy, this is where I think we have a section for yours.
Okay, great.
We add a little subsection that's like, after the publication of the proposed agenda, board members are encouraged to reach out to the author of any of the items with questions. You know, just so that there's, and then also then we say, further, if there are additional items that a board member anticipates bringing to the top of the agenda at the meeting, that the board member is requested to share those out for publication to the board ahead of time, something like that.
Yeah, but I think if possible, limit those additions.
I agree. But any board member has the right to bring something at the top of the meeting. But I
Yeah.
think we want to suggest that they're sparing and also suggest that they're not only distributed, because what I want to get to in peak is be able to then just have kind of like, so the public also has awareness of those too, not just when it's emailed to the board.
Okay, I need you to say that again.
Yeah,
because
and I
got
can-
lost in the middle of it.
I can work on that
Okay.
proposed language
Okay.
too,
So I have after the publication of the board packet,
of the proposed agenda packet.
board members are encouraged to contact the author of the item. Author of items. For more information or clarification.
And any, you know, items that they anticipate bringing to the top of the board meeting, be distributed and published,
Yeah,
at
and
least
any,
distributed.
so before that, any items brought to the board or should be emailed to the board beforehand? So we have time to review.
I think so, but I was trying to get to the point where we can have it emailed to the board and published. And this was something years ago, there was debate with Will on this. But I do think that there's a place where we can, you know, publish, you know, late arriving item, you know, something. It certainly has no guarantee, but it's just a way to share information that, hey, this is something I might propose to bring to the top of the agenda. So everybody has it.
Yeah, and I think all board members should have that before the board meeting.
Okay, items that board members anticipate bringing to the meeting should be distributed to the board via email as soon as possible and submitted to the designee preparing the proposed agenda.
Yeah, for publication as appropriate.
That means you have to create an agenda item for something that's not been,
They're all proposed though,
okay.
Yeah,
at that point,
You
everything.
see how easy I am? I just roll over.
okay.
Can I ask a question?
Adoption of, yes,
Should we have a placeholder in the agenda for those items? Because
yes.
once it's published, where does that go in the agenda packet?
And that's why I put that footnote as appropriate, because Christy and I are gonna figure that out. We have a couple ideas. But yes,
Okay.
and then, okay, go ahead.
We want to say something like board members should use this sparingly or something, right? We want to encourage people not to just.
Right, late arriving items, last minute items, whatever.
Later arriving items are discouraged.
Well,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like that.
I mean, sure. And it may be something where the designee says, hey, I already said, you know, Jessica, this isn't ready, and proposing it for the next meeting, and then the board can duke it out. So Mariah, I'm gonna let you figure that out quietly. We're gonna move forward. 4.3, adoption of agenda, I think is good. I think it's pretty much the same but more clear. 4.4, let me use, oh, sorry, go ahead. Adoption of agenda.
Oh, wait. Say it again? Are
I'm
we back
looking
on
at
the
the
one before?
section, adoption of the agenda.
Page 4. Oh, page 4, not number 4. Okay, sorry. That's what I was giving.
Okay. And then 4.4 or time limit on meetings.
Could we change that to 10:30?
What's your thought on that?
Well, 11 o'clock. You know, at 11 o'clock, we have 4 more items to go, and let's just push through it, which is another 2 hours.
But if it's 10:30, it gives us more just,
I mean, 11 o'clock is so long, we should even have it at like 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock. This is where we decide if we want to move forward, because
That's fine. I don't have a strong feeling about what time it is.
Have you ever thought about starting your meetings earlier?
Yes, but that's something wasn't able to bring because we're having a board transition and we adopt the regular schedule before we had a new board. So I didn't push for that this year, but we could, and nothing in these rules would preclude us from doing that in 26.
There's no way to switch it now.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, we can by majority,
republish.
we can by majority vote, change our regular meeting schedule. I mean, that's always been clear. Because nobody's done it.
yeah, if there's a set earlier time.
But
that
that's a
everybody
different
knows
topic.
There's a set earlier time instead of
Right.
calling a special meeting at 5 and then,
Right.
you know, quorum saying I can't show up.
Right. I will say
Until
the
7.
mechanism to do what you two are talking about exists in our current rules.
Okay.
All right, so 4.4, Jillian, is your suggestion that we change 11 to 10:30?
No, this should make it even 10.
Okay, 10 o'clock.
And I don't know about you, but the next day is pretty rough.
And should
Like
we?
4 hours of sleep.
Yep. To account for a possibility of a different time, because actually, this is a flaw. Do you want to say 3 hours after the meeting start time? That would be more clear.
Oh, just in case we
More
decide to
durable.
have 6 o'clock meetings.
Nothing in our rules
Yeah.
says 7 o'clock anyways, so I don't think anything in our rules should say 10 o'clock. Let's say
I
3
see.
hours
Okay,
after the start of the meeting.
everybody be on time.
Special meetings.
Thank you for that as a member of the public. Thank you.
Supervisor shall order the agenda items. I think to make it consistent with the earlier change, it would be the designee
Where does it say that?
under section special meetings. I would also ask Mariah, could you please separate out call to order, pledge of allegiance and roll call as separate items? Same as we have in the regular.
Yeah, and Mariah, speaking of, so special meetings, that's in statute. Regular meetings are in statute. Anything that has to do with a statutory duty or required by statute, could you make sure that it aligns? The board of, or the rules of order align with that?
Yes.
She has been doing a great job of that. As we've been
Well-
going through this.
Yes, I understand, but now that I've had, the supervisor, because like 5.1 chairperson, the supervisor at present shall be the moderator. Well, of course, that is a statute. Special
Yes.
meetings have special, you know,
Yeah.
in statute, there's certain things for special meetings.
Okay, so conduct of meetings, 5.1, any other comments? So
No,
let's look at
yes.
5.1.2.3.4.5. Any burning issues? Are we good?
So permission to speak and interrupting, and then discussion items, because I think somebody brought that up earlier about discussion. So if it's I mean, that's more of a work session, because when we have a work session, we're discussing those items. But in a board meeting, permission to speak. So how do we, if there is a potential work item type of, should there be open discussion for that during that time?
I'm a little unclear. Are you asking about how we know if someone has permission to speak? Or are you asking
No.
about when we have discussion?
So if there's, how do we know the difference of within an agenda item, if it's a discussion type topic or if it's not? Because permission to speak, because if this means that Christie has permission to speak, and then the next person, or do we have a free-for-all and just discuss that item?
I think it's up to you as moderator.
Okay.
I would say we missed in 4.4 special meetings, adding the second public comment to special meetings, which I would be supportive of.
I'm supportive of
That
that.
was a vestige of the prior administration.
After new business.
Yes, please. But back to the, Jillian's point and Rob's earlier point, balancing interruptions with conversation. I don't know that the issues you two are bringing up is something that's resolved in rules as much as just kind of, facilitation flow.
Okay,
I don't know. I really don't. There might be something to add in rules, but I don't think so.
well, like other councils or boards, they will have where everybody gets one chance to speak for their 3 minutes or whatever. We don't have to put a timeline. And then we go around again, and then that's it.
Yeah, so we have 5.4. Are you suggesting making that more strict?
Well, going back to interruptions, because if we start with Christie and then Kathy Noel goes next and then Ryan or whatever, but then we have somebody on the other side just interrupting. But it's a kind of a discussion item,
Right.
then should we have that more
I think it
defined?
depends
or-
on the item, depends on the flow. If you feel like the discussion's going well, if it's productive.
Yeah.
Like Rob said, sometimes it's more efficient to not go around. Sometimes it is more efficient to go around. Depends on the topic, I think.
Then it was also pointed out that some people, if they don't have anything to say, then you don't need to
Call
stop
on
and
them.
say, call on them and.
I just say,
Yeah, but you should call on everybody because
No, I know,
some
I'm just
people that are just more
repeating
quiet
the-
than others, and they may have something to say.
Okay.
If they're a board member, they have an obligation to speak when they need to.
Okay, but then it goes back to, do they need permission then?
yeah,
I'm
So I
used
think-
to more.
Yeah.
More discussions are back and forth without, yes, you can speak now, yes, you can speak now.
I think we should
That's
talk
just
about
what I'm
this as
used
a
to.
whole board, Jillian.
Okay.
Because I think the other board members will have some ideas. Disruption of meetings, that's clear. I
I'll try
think,
not to do that.
And that is a statutory duty, by the way.
correct. Public comment, I think we've spent a lot of time on that. Public hearing, we did a great job on that. Any other burning issues before we get to record of meetings? Which we haven't spent any time on much. I wonder if we could rename clerk responsibility to minutes or something more clear. It would just, it's fine.
Yeah.
I just think that as it's going through, it's like public comment,
It would be
public
more
hearing,
clear.
minutes.
Yeah, because
Something like minutes, just so we know what we're reading about. And then public access to meeting records. This was, 2021, 2022, where,
Yeah, I know where this came from.
Yeah, and I was like, hi, we don't have an IT person. At some point, we're gonna run out of space. I can't promise to keep these videos forever, even though I have every intention to. So I think I did get in there, subject to the states and townships applicable record retention policies. I'm fine with this language that's here. In public access to meeting records, I do think we should make clear that it's,
Wait a minute, why is this in a board rules of order? Why is it even in here?
it was just bad politics of the time. But
well,
I'm happy to, it's not something we don't do. I agree, it's unusual.
It's not part of the rules of a meeting.
But I do think in
It's
terms of,
the record of the meeting though is, and
I think the record of the
The
meeting
minutes,
is.
yes.
I think but I think this is where we have the opportunity, going back to the revised meeting packet. This is what would be, is the kind of, I think, ideal, right? Because we used to not even keep meeting packets. right? And we're certainly not required to under state law, but I think we should have the revised meeting packet, the minutes, and, you know, the video, but important caveat. Video or audio, if it exists, subject to the state and township's applicable record retention policies. As everyone knows, the state's record retention policy on audio and video is I only have to keep it until the minutes are adopted. Of course, we keep it forever, except for a staff person who accidentally deleted a bunch of them. We're gonna have this was a while ago. No, of course it wasn't Christie. Of course it wasn't Christie. So, but, you know, as part of the digital records thing, Mariah's gonna work with me on the township record retention policy, so we can have some things that are more strict. So I am comfortable with this. It's just all this stuff about the OMA and FOIA, like, that's obvious, like the OMA is throughout this document. So it's fine. Okay. It's just uneven.
Okay, so you want to keep that paragraph, the clerk shall make available to the members of the public the records and minutes of board
Yeah.
meetings? Yeah, okay, then when it says minutes prepared by the
Record.
clerk, about changing that because you don't, the clerk doesn't have to prepare the minutes. We can hire somebody, which we have.
Well, I'm responsible for preparing them or designating somebody to prepare them.
I don't, is that
The,
true? don't
I am
think it is
responsible for
true. Yeah, that's
preparing
true.
the official proceeding of the meeting, the minutes or not.
Responsible for drafting and maintenance of township board meeting minutes.
So I did.
That's shorthand.
I did add at the beginning, the board is responsible for recording and maintaining an audio or video recording of each entire meeting of the board if it exists. Because we wanna,
Exactly.
because we wanna make sure we've got language other places that say, like, maybe our system's not going to be working. And we
Right.
don't wanna bind ourselves.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's.
And
what we
I
wanted
think,
to-
and as we, you know, I mean, Granicus is awesome because we've got them all there. It's well assured, we keep it forever. The problem was when there was that moment of trying to keep them locally. I do want clarification to the next section. The clerk shall make available to the members of the public the records and minute of board meetings. The records, I think we can. I mean, that's always true.
Yeah.
But the records, I just want to define somewhere what our kind of end game is that, you know, an amended board packet, minutes, video, like the whole thing, you know, is kind of our goal.
Do you want that in the parentheses?
I think, yeah, I think so, kind of describing what we mean by meeting records. Because that's what we really strove for in the, on the website with everything that we publish.
So amended agenda packet, and what
Mhm.
else is in there for records?
Minutes,
Minutes.
video. The clerk should be responsible for posting the recordings if they exist or electronic links thereto. I mean, on the township website, yes. Okay, motions and resolutions. I thought we did a good job on that whole section 10. But there were a couple of issues. Let's go to rules on procedural motions. A couple questions. The top, appealing a decision. Mariah, what does it mean and how can we make that more plain?
So. That's a good question. I've lost track. I think that that would be. Not prepared to answer your question at the moment.
Okay,
There are some things that the supervisor as the chair
right,
is determining, and then someone may appeal, right?
yeah,
But I don't know how it applies to what you do.
yeah, I don't know that I've ever seen that at a Scio board table, but it could come up, so
You can always
let's
start.
put a pin in that. Next is the motion to reconsider. I think we should define this a little better, because this has come up in,
Where are you in?
I'm sorry, the second bullet point,
Under,
under rules on procedural motions.
Oh,
Okay.
Page 10.
Page 10. And under rules on procedural motions, bold,
I see.
second bullet point, motion to reconsider. I think, to Rob's question, do we really want that? That is standard, in most like decision-making bodies. I do think that makes sense, whether it's the same meeting or at the first meeting held thereafter. What we mean by motion to reconsider, the motion may be made, no questions shall be reconsidered more than once, nor shall a vote to reconsider be reconsidered. So here's the part that is not practical or realistic is no questions shall be reconsidered more than once, like in what time period?
But a reconsideration is different than a repeal and voting on. Again,
Okay, so would a motion to take step, go in, go left? And then the motion to go left is reconsidered. Then there would be a second motion to go right.
could be, yeah,
Okay, but if the motion to go left, because I just think practically speaking, the policies of the board are what they are until we change them.
yeah.
Because it's sort of overly complicated for the township board, I think.
Yeah, to me, the weird thing about the motion to reconsider is that it's made by the member who voted with the winning side. So that person then says, I've changed my mind, right?
Well, and I think it makes sense. I think the intention is if there's suddenly more information, like, I didn't know. Left was blocked, we have to go right. And that's why the timeline is set for that meeting or the one after. It anticipates that there's some new information or something. I mean, I'm fine with it as is. I just want to say periodically it comes up about what we mean by reconsideration.
I think we should just leave it as written.
Okay.
It's not, I don't think it's something that happens frequently, does it?
Okay, no,
I'm guessing that's right out of Robert's rules too.
It's always clear.
yeah. So voting, this is where Mariah's offering conflict of interest language. Thank you so much. I want to remind us, we've added to the agenda at the top of every meeting, a chance to declare conflicts on anything on the agenda, which is fantastic.
Yeah, so I have two separate things in here. The first is just like a very brief description, and then the second is more detailed, and the second is actually adapted from something the planning commission is looking at right now.
I think the general language is fine. I think I agree that the whole thing is any conflict or appearance of a conflict, it's always real or perceived, and maybe tie it back to the section of the agenda. Board members are expected to declare any conflicts at the standing declaration of conflict.
So take out the long description.
I think you can keep it in. What do you think?
Oh.
Keep it in.
I think we need to keep it in just so they can know where to look for it.
Have you been working at this, the planning commission, right? On this? the planning
No, I
commission
have,
level?
I think Kim Moore's working on it.
Okay.
Yeah, Kim would.
Yeah.
So take out 11.3 and just keep 11.4.
No, I
Keep them both.
suggest both.
Okay.
What do you guys think?
I mean, they definitely don't conflict with each other.
Yeah.
This is what you were talking about earlier in the meeting about moving 11 to 4.4, was it 4.2?
I'm gonna do the attendance.
The attendance and quorum section, we moved
Okay.
up, Rob.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think this is fine. I think we should talk about it with the full board. I think
Okay.
other people will have
Yeah,
input.
yeah, that's reasonable.
Yeah, and it does say prior to a vote, any member who has a real or perceived conflict of interest before the board shall state.
All right, remainder of the roll call vote. Adoption of amendment to an applicability of the board rules and parliamentary authority. I think those are solid,
Where's that?
the final three sections.
Page 12. 12.5.
Yeah,
Oh,
these haven't changed much, and we
Yeah.
discussed them early.
Oh,
She
said the title and not the section. Okay, it's.
The only other thing would be the ordering. I mean, this is intuitive, and I think we do a decent job of it, but we need to do better. But whoever the designee is on the ordering of the agenda should obviously consider staff resource, township resources when ordering the agenda, and by resources, the expensive consultant who's sitting on the phone, the staff person who's sitting there. So I just think it's about like kind of township resources. So we, I think, should add something in there when, under the proposed agenda preparation under 4. Or the ordering, either one.
Okay, so regular meetings, order of business, oh, we've got the supervisor and administrator shall finalize the order. I must have missed when you guys mentioned that. So that's gonna say the designee. Well, right there, we could say the designee shall finalize the order of the proposed agenda using the following order of business as a guideline, but has the discretion to propose reordering items based on
Best use of township resources.
exactly, I like it.
And then
Yeah,
have a
but then-
definition for that example.
Example, staff
just-
time or.
Consultant time, whatever.
consultant time.
Yeah.
That's what special topic is for. So, I said special order, that was too formal for this group, so special topic, so they may use special topic.
Yeah.
For that purpose.
Right.
If they just,
They could also, yeah, I mean, I think they could just move, yeah.
Yeah, whatever.
Okay,
Okay, so I think this is good input. Anything else burning? I mean, this is, I think, a really good proposed kind of second step for the second version. Are we good with having Mariah kind of get this to the next step and then, I'll bring back kind of a summary of what the committee's done to our April 8th meeting?
Thank you, Mariah, for doing such a great job.
yeah, thank you, Mariah. It's
I'm
not
sorry, I
easy.
can't remember what an appeal is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, thank you,
I'll have a
everybody.
definition.
It's always a balance between getting like formal and informal and prescriptive and
Mhm.
open, so. So good work, everybody.
I think it should be the designee has the discretion to propose a reorder of the agenda, right? Because you guys still have to
Yeah.
approve the agenda, so you can still say,
Yeah,
don't agree with you, designee.
but moving an item to, accommodate.
Yeah.
For the best use of township resources.
Well, if we're gonna have a specific order and rules of order, then they shouldn't be able to, we're gonna have 2 back-to-back public comments or.
Well, see, I
Yeah.
agree with Jillian. That's why I said special
Yeah.
topic. That's what a special that's
So-
what special order is.
Well, okay, here's something. So under new business,
Yeah,
new business comes before, no, unfinished business usually has been before new business.
yes,
So anything under unfinished business that has a contractor or a staff member, they should be above something that we
Yeah.
have to talk about the parking lot.
agree.
But I don't know if we should move them all, everybody that is here that has a resource to special order.
Yeah,
I-
you're also then
I
moving
agree.
it above the first public comment
No.
section, which is not good.
So I think we do need some kind of guardrails, like, I mean, I think it's within the section that they properly appear in. Like, you move people to the top of the section they properly appear in. You know, if there's something on,
So all items involving staff might be at
not,
the beginning of.
not necessarily, I'd say.
It's still
discussion
gonna,
of Township resources,
Resources that,
because the concern about staff might pale into the concern about 6 hours of $150 consultant sitting there.
No, I shouldn't have said that. I meant like those types of
Township
situations.
resources.
But they all would be at the beginning of new business. That doesn't mean that new business would move to the top of the
Right,
agenda.
but they would have the discretion that if they need to use special topic, i.e. special order, they could do so to accommodate that.
order for again?
I think that's complicated.
that's what I think.
Because-
But otherwise, the
Because the
categories become kind of.
But the
maybe
consultants
less-
are here for, generally here for specific projects, right?
Right.
They're not just here to make a.
Right, as our staff, they're here for like 1 or 2 items.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not,
So
anyways, we'll figure it out. But yeah, just some intention there that the ordering should consider.
What is special topic again? There's not a definition that, unless it's here and I missed it.
special
No,
order.
it's just something that we added. I think we added to sort of capture like introductions and recognitions and a bunch of other things.
It may or may
that-
not be used. It's something that like doesn't fit into any of the other categories.
Okay, but could we have what that means,
Sure.
unless it's, again, written out somewhere that I'm missing? So special order, is that what you want to call it?
No, I think the group wants to call it special topic.
Special topic, okay. And then, introductions, presentations.
No, we took that out.
No, but that's what we were weren't we gonna use special topics if we had some of those?
So special topics should be special, something that doesn't readily fit into any of the normal categories.
Such as,
Such as if we have somebody we're swearing in, if we have a new staff person that we want to acknowledge, if we have recognition of somebody who did something fantastic. When the fire chief, acknowledge the staff, anything special, meaning not usual.
okay, if we could put those examples in here, because special order or topic.
I
sorry,
agree.
Scratch it out, then I put order, could be. I mean, yeah. Used in a way that,
Kind of something that doesn't fit into any other category.
okay,
Okay, so with that, sounds like a good plan, then I would like to open it up to public comment. Members of the public who are present, for 5 minutes. Yeah.
Pam Boyd, I'm a resident. Couple of comments. When you were talking about what to do with a board member who doesn't attend. It was shocking to residents when we found out that Corto was missing a lot of meetings because she was taking care of a family member. And I remember Palmer telling us one night in frustration. And it's like, wow, I wish the board had told us that before, because we would have been more patient and respecting that. The other board member that missed a lot of meetings towards the end of his term. Maria, this question will be for you, is can a board member be censured for not attending meetings?
Probably.
And so my thought is that you can ask a board member to follow the rules, but life happens. And so there does need to be some kind of response, and maybe it's to be censured. And, censured doesn't really do much other than it just puts a note in your file. You get slapped on the wrist. Oops, I forgot my phone. The other thing, thank you, Rod, is my rule of thumb when I'm looking to another entity and how they do things, it's actually Washtenaw County Road Commission, because I went to their meetings online for a good year. And they have always had one working session a month, and it's titled on their website, working session, simple. And then the other thing is on their agenda packet, it states participants will be able to address the board virtually or in person during the public comment period of the agenda. That's it. It's simple. And when you start getting too wordy, people get confused. Thank you.
And if I could just say one thing too, I want to suggest we incorporate that in, but also I do think, you know, we do have some of that language kind of here, so we might want to move that down.
Following up on what Pam just said, I was gonna ask about, do you really want to have the phrase, be civil and refrain from personal attack? This new board is more about being kinder and gentler. And I don't think you're gonna suffer attack with residents with this new board. And sort of prefacing public comment with saying, be civil, and it's talking down to residents, and I don't think this board wants to do that. So at the very beginning, you were talking about special meetings versus work sessions. I think there is a lot of value to specifying the difference between special meetings and work sessions, where special meetings you can vote, work sessions are discussion only. And then when you go back to a regular board meeting, you can vote on what was in the working session, because you're gonna have a lot more people paying attention to the regular meeting than the work session. And so making voting part of the next board meeting, I think is valuable. I loved Kathleen's idea of the monthly work session for the department heads. And we've had two work sessions, the priorities work session and the budget work session. And look how brilliantly both of those worked. You got a lot done in a short period of time. At the budget work session resulted in 5 or 10 minutes of a summary from Trustee Brandt at the next board meeting. So that was very efficient. I think you should, and we've been asking for years for you guys to use work sessions more often. I think there's real value in that. Expected attendance. What Pam was just saying about censure, is a fine an option? Can you be fined for not coming? Okay, now Luke says, what are you talking about? That might be an option. That, like Pam was just saying, consequences for that kind of stuff. I disagree with what you were just saying about moving staff to the top of the section. The special topic thing, I think there's a lot of value in the special topic to put language in there that is about making use of township resources, specifically staff time, so they can go home at a reasonable hour, and not making consultants expensive. Consultants sit there for a long time. I think the proper place for it would be after consent, because then it's right at the beginning of business. Consent is usually a 2-minute conversation. If something gets removed from that, it goes in later in the agenda. I think special topic would be good in the just after consent. And you were talking about conversation versus more formal being called on. I said it's more effective, not more efficient, but it is actually both. The conversation is both more effective and more efficient. I would recommend that you make hard copies of the archived videos, so you don't have to use server space you could put them on DVDs. And
Not Granicus.
yes, but if you run out of room, And you have
We
to,
won't run out of room. It's guaranteed.
okay, fantastic. And you talked about deleted videos. Do I have YouTube videos of meetings that have been deleted? Do I need to?
I think we restored all those. I'll have to go back through it with Christy. I think it was the error that was made, I think was for some that we'd already uploaded, but I will go back and check with Christy.
If there are any, I've got 590 of them,
That
so,
happened about a year ago or so, so I'll have to go back and look.
and I've got all of those, so if that happens, I'm a resource for that. I can download those and print them. And I think in the records retention, you should highlight, going back to Jane Vogel, sorry to say those words, that you should highlight the difference between available and posted. That available, anyone can come in 8 days afterwards and view the minutes. They might not necessarily be posted on the website, but I think there needs to be clarification in the difference between available and posted. Because that was always an issue, and they were available, but she always made it an issue that they weren't posted on the website. And then Mariah just made a good point, a motion to repeal. That's nowhere in the rules of order. Should a motion to repeal be part of that last section that you were just talking about?
Versus reconsider.
They're two separate things.
Yeah, okay.
So they could both be in there.
And that's all I've got. Well done. And Mariah, thank you very much. You are much more active in this committee than in the board meetings. And thank you for.
That's what, they invited me to speak.
Yeah.
Exactly, but lending your wisdom to this group has been very beneficial, and thank you for the redlining and all the stuff you've done to help. Well done.
And I just have one quick response. We can take it up at the board table, but there's been something Rob said. I really do think it's important to have special topics after public comment. And it is not currently after public comment, and I think that that's a shortcoming of the informal edition of the intros and recognitions. I don't think we should be having substantive conversation, much less action or a presentation on anything before public comment. That's why we have public
Right.
comment even before minutes. So I would suggest special topics be placed right after approval of minutes and before consent. There's a section.
Is it okay to add on the public access to meeting records, not approved by the board shall be available for public inspection at the township hall within 8 days, just to clarify?
Oh, yeah, whatever the statute says is fine. Yeah, that's fine.
Oh, do we have online people? Sorry.
Anybody online want to speak? Seeing no Zoom hands, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Grant, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Aiken, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Seeing none, meeting is adjourned at 2:53. Thank you, everybody. Good work.
Thank you. So do you want, I don't think so. It's in 2008, but it's still, how is this?